Good afternoon and welcome to the joint general session of the ISO Board of Governors and Western Energy Markets Governing Body. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and all attendees are currently muted to reduce background noise. There will be an opportunity for public comment throughout today's call, and you will receive instructions on how to enter the comment queue at that time. With that, I'll now go ahead and turn the call over to Roger Collinton with the California ISO. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Silas, and welcome everyone to the special joint general session of the ISO Board of Governors and the Western Energy Markets Governing Body. Let's start out with a roll call, which I will do in alphabetical order, starting with you, Vice Chair Bornstein.
Present.
Member Campbell.
Present.
Member Decker.
Present.
Governor Edo.
Present.
Governor Galitova.
Present.
Chair Konzioka.
Present.
Governor Leslie.
Present.
Member Prescott.
Present.
Chair Shorey.
Here.
And Vice Chair Wagner.
Here.
Thank you, governing body members and board members. We have a full complement and a quorum, and we can proceed with that. Let me move to our first agenda item, which is our welcome and general public comment. So first we'll start with our chair's welcome, and I'll turn it to you, Chair Shorey.
Yes, thank you. I want to welcome everyone that has signed in. It looks like we have quite a significant attendance at today's meeting, and we're all excited about this. This is the first step in what may be a long journey coming forward, but it's a pretty interesting and exciting one. I'm looking forward, as I'm sure all of the board members are, to hearing the comments and the presentation today and seeing if we can get the ball on the road. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Chair Shorey. Chair Konzioka.
Thank you. Well, once again, we are meeting to address proposed governance changes. The last governance change was just a year and a half ago, and that was to implement the joint authority as recommended by the Governance Review Committee. But as we know, this time around it's different. As we will hear, the proposed governance changes were initiated and developed by a group independent, ISO staff, the Board of Governors, and the governing body. And as Chair Shorey just noted, as is evident by the amount of engagement with the development of the proposal and stakeholder comments received and those participating today, this is a topic and decision that is important and of great interest to many. So thank you, and Roger, back to you.
Thank you, Chair Konzioka. Our next item on agenda item 1 is for general public comment, and this is for public comment for items that are not on the agenda today. We give folks an opportunity to speak if they have things on their mind. Silas, can you check if there are any on the line for general public comment?
If you would like to make a comment, please press the raise hand icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen, or if you are dialed into the phone only line, you can press #2 on your telephone keypad to enter the comment queue. There are no general public comments at this time.
Thank you. Agenda item number 2 is our decision on the July 17th, 2024 joint general session minutes. And can I have a motion to approve those minutes, please?
So moved.
Thank you, Angelina. Second.
Second.
I'm sorry, who is that?
Rebecca.
Rebecca. Thank you, Rebecca. And I'm going to go ahead and take the vote. Vice Chair Bornstein.
Aye.
Member Campbell.
Aye.
Member Decker.
Aye.
Governor Edo.
Aye.
Governor Galitova.
Aye.
Chair Konzioka.
Aye.
Governor Leslie.
Aye.
Member Prescott.
Aye.
Chair Shorey.
Aye.
And Vice Chair Wagner.
Aye.
Thank you, governors and governing body members. The motion passes. Our next item, I turn over to our CEO, Elliot Mainzer, to provide some remarks for the meeting today.
Thank you, Roger, and thank you, Chair Konzioka, Chair Shorey, members of the ISO Board of Governors, the Western Energy Markets Governing Body. I've had the pleasure of spending the past couple of days actually at the Electric Power Research Institute's summer seminar reflecting on just how far we've come as an industry and how quickly things are changing. I've also been reflecting that 2024 marks the 10-year anniversary of the WEM. And during that time, the market has produced $5.65 billion of economic benefits and significant greenhouse gas reductions. More importantly, perhaps, the WEM has become an invaluable tool for supporting reliability by moving power to where it's most needed, especially during extreme weather events. After 10 years of real-world operating experience with the WEM, I believe it's been firmly established that market coordination across the widest possible footprint with minimal seams is key to maximizing reliability and affordability for electricity customers in California and across the broader West. EDAM, of course, will further build on and enhance this value proposition. As the market has evolved, we've also seen a growing appreciation for the importance of fair and equitable governance, as well as highly inclusive and responsive stakeholder engagement. Today, we're here to address a proposal developed through a very rigorous and inclusive stakeholder process. Moreover, the proposal before you today is testament to the vision and commitment of key policymakers across the West and the hard work and engagement of a diverse group of individuals across many different industry sectors who recognize the intrinsic value of wide area market coordination, the importance of further advancing the governance of the regional market, and the opportunity to lay the groundwork for even deeper and more valuable forms of coordination across the West. All of us at the ISO are very impressed and appreciative of their efforts and pleased to recommend adoption of the Pathways Step 1 proposal today. With that, I'm going to turn it back to Roger and Stacey Crowley, the ISO's VP of External Affairs, to tee up the discussion. Thanks very much.
And thank you, Elliot. And before I turn it over to you, Stacey, let me note for the record that we have received public comment letters on this item. We have received 4 letters, one from the Westwide Governance Pathways Initiative, the letter signed by all 32 members of the launch committee, one from the Regional Issues Forum, signed by the 10 sector liaisons, a letter from the body of state regulators, and a letter from the Independent Energy Producers Association. Each of those letters have been provided to the board and the governing body. And so with that, let me turn it over to you, Stacey Crowley, our Vice President of External Affairs.
Thank you, Roger, and good afternoon, Chair Shorey, Chair Kanzioka, governors, and Western Energy Markets governing body members. I'm pleased to introduce this topic to the joint bodies today as you consider your decision on the Step 1 proposal from the Westwide Governance Pathways Initiative Launch Committee. As you know, this is an unusual process, but one that has followed the good work of the Governance Review Committee and even earlier, the WEM Transitional Committee, as we've evolved the governance structure of the successful regional market and the upcoming extension of the day-ahead market. So Adam Schultz, our Manager of Regional Coordination, will walk you through the Launch Committee's proposal that, once received by you, was put through our public stakeholder process. He will go through the elements of the proposal, the robust set of stakeholder comments received, and our responses to those comments for your consideration, so that you have a full record of the process of the recommended changes to the Western energy markets. I want to thank Adam Schultz and Burton Gross for being our key liaisons to the Launch Committee, but many others have engaged in the process, including Holly Taylor, Christina Osborne, Stacy Bernard, and Christina Gamera. I also want to thank the Launch Committee and stakeholders who've engaged in the intense discussions and have coordinated so well with us throughout the process. So with that, I will turn it over to Adam Schultz.
Great, thank you, Stacey. So good afternoon, Chair Shorey and Kanzioka, members of the board and governing body. As Stacey mentioned, my name is Adam Schultz. I'm the Manager of Regional Coordination at the ISO. On behalf of the management team this afternoon, I'm going to present an overview of the Step 1 proposal and the feedback we received from stakeholders, along with our recommendation that the board and governing body, 1, jointly approve the proposal as submitted, and 2, direct management to move forward with its implementation. Next slide, please. But first, I wanted to highlight briefly the process leading up to today's meeting. First, of course, echoing Elliot and Stacey and acknowledging the Pathways Initiative, a robust stakeholder-driven effort convened by stakeholders from across the West at the request of regulators from California and 4 other states last summer. The real aim was to develop governance enhancements to facilitate the success of EDAM and future regional market offerings. And management wants to recognize the enormous time and effort from the launch committee and all stakeholders to develop this proposal, including multiple public calls and opportunities for written comment along the way. This culminated in June with submitting the proposal before us today to the chairs of the board and governing body. And at the request of the chairs, over the last 2 months, ISO staff has run its own stakeholder process. And for more information on that process, we provided a link here to our policy initiative page where you can find the proposal itself, recordings of those stakeholder meetings, and a catalog of the comments we received from 32 entities. Next slide, please. So before I get into the feedback we received and our recommendation, I wanted to first cover the key elements of the Step 1 proposal itself. Next slide. So the launch committees pursued what they've termed a stepwise approach to evolution of governance. The approach is intended to respond to the letter from Western regulators last summer to increase the independence of the governance of the regional markets to facilitate the success of EDAM and future regional market offerings. Step 1, at the left of the visual here, is really focused on enhancing the role of the Western energy markets governing body consistent with existing California law. And this is the step we're addressing today. The goal of Step 1, as we understand it, is really to build momentum for EDAM and to demonstrate an early commitment to the vision set forth by regulators last year. Step 2, in the center of the page here, it's actively under development this summer, and the expectation is that it'll recommend more fundamental governance changes. It has a series of public workshops underway this summer with a plan to publish a final proposal on Step 2 later this fall. Our expectation is the development, that proposal will recommend the development of a regional organization separate from the ISO with defined role in managing the markets. And the expectation is that legislation in California will be required to enable that step. Step 3, as shown here, is much more conceptual in nature. It's not actively being developed, and the concepts would most likely not be developed in any detail until after a regional organization has been established and stood up. Our expectation is it would continue to evolve beyond Step 2 in an effort to offer additional regional services to the West. So for the remainder of this presentation, I will be speaking only about Step 1. Next slide, please. So Step 1, the real headline change being recommended with the Step 1 proposal is to move from joint authority to primary authority over the rules that apply to the Western energy markets, EIM and EDAM. This is described in the box at the left. So the way this would work is the governing body would approve an item pursuant to its primary authority, and the item would then go to the consent agenda for the Board of Governors. The current applies to test used to establish the scope of joint authority would remain unchanged under Step 1. The second element of the Step 1 proposal is the creation of a dual filing mechanism at FERC. The current joint authority process includes a multi-step dispute resolution mechanism, where if there's dispute between the two bodies, the proposal will be remanded to ISO staff. And if that revised proposal fails, it cannot be filed at FERC unless the board finds there are exigent circumstances critical to preserving reliability or market integrity. So for context, the ISO has never needed to use this process. So what Step 1 proposes to change is that it would retain this basic dispute resolution process, including the exigent circumstances provision, but would then create a dual filing option in the event that both bodies are unable to resolve a disagreement following a remand to ISO staff. There is precedent for such a mechanism. It is currently in place in ISO New England and has been previously approved by FERC. Under this mechanism, each body would be able to approve different proposals to be filed as co-equals before FERC. FERC would then have the authority to approve one or the other proposals, or potentially to adopt elements of each. And the third element, represented in the box at right, deals with recommended changes to add public interest protections to the charter for EIM and EDAM governance. Western regulators worked closely with public advocates to develop language to be added to the charter to reinforce the importance of considering the interests of Western consumers and respecting state and local regulatory authorities. And that is recommended in an appendix to the Step 1 proposal. Next slide, please. A fourth element, less substantive and more of a procedural element, involves a trigger mechanism. So this trigger is intended to define when Step 1 would take effect. We understand this mechanism was developed to provide, one, some certainty on near-term governance changes to enhance the role of the governing body, and two, to ensure that there would actually be a robust EDAM footprint before these changes would be implemented. So what the proposal recommends is a trigger mechanism that requires 2 criteria be met before these changes are implemented. First, an execution of EDAM agreements by utilities representing loads equal to or greater than 70% of the CAISO BA's load. And 2, that those entities represent geographic diversity across the West, including 1 additional utility beyond those listed here from the Pacific Northwest and 1 from the Desert Southwest. So that's the trigger. And then at right, I'm showing a current map of the current state of play for level of EDAM commitments we have. This is currently published on our website. We have executed implementation agreements with PacifiCorp and Portland General Electric, shown in dark blue, and the other 4 entities there have expressed public indication of a leaning towards EDAM as their preferred day-ahead market selection. So by our calculations, if all of these entities proceed to execution of an implementation agreement, we will have met the threshold for the step 1 trigger. Next slide, please. And now I'm going to transition to reviewing the comments we received from stakeholders. I think as noted by some of the previous speakers, we had robust participation in the ISO stakeholder process with more than 30 parties submitting written feedback. Many of those parties were also very active in the pathway stakeholder process, and most offered general support for where the proposal landed. ISOs developed a more detailed matrix of these comments along with our responses, but I will summarize them here for this presentation. Overall, there was strong support for the step 1 proposal. Sorry, if you go back 1 slide there. Yep. 22 sets of comments did offer their support. Another 6 parties offered a neutral position. 2 offered no position, and 1 member of the public did state opposition to the proposal. So thanks to the stakeholders for participating in this indicative voting process as part of this process. Next slide, please. Okay, so over the next several slides, I will go through and summarize the feedback we received by issue. First major issue really received, I think, the most feedback of all issues that we received in comments was around the issue of having an interest in the ISO board and governing body continuing to collaborate if step 1 is approved. And parties did offer a range of suggested mechanisms to effectuate this. The next issue around the step 1 process, a handful of parties sought more information on how changes to the governance documents would actually be made to implement the step 1 changes should they be approved today. Third issue here, public interest. As noted, there was recommended language added to the step 1 proposal for changes to be made to the charter around protection of the public interest, and 1 party offered specific additional changes sought to that language. Next slide, please. The dual filing mechanism. A few parties sought more detail over the process for making dual filings before FERC in the event of a dispute resolution that didn't resolve itself in consensus. Questions such as how would the dual filing be triggered? Who would make that decision? What role would there be for ISO staff in preparing dual filings? How would we ensure that the ISO staff would accurately articulate the positions of both dual filings? Next slide, please. The next 2 issues. First, exigent circumstances. I mentioned earlier, provision around the board to be able to make a filing under exigent circumstances, even in an event where there's not consensus between the 2 bodies. And several parties here asked for more definition of what constitutes time-critical exigent circumstances. Additional clarification was sought around mitigating confusion about the meaning of the term, interest in noting its limited nature, and ensuring that it's only used as a last resort. Then on the trigger mechanism, which I walked through a few slides ago, several parties recommended an elimination of the mechanism entirely, and that the proposal, should it be adopted, be implemented immediately. On the flip side, 1 party did suggest the step 1 change not occur until after 1 year of EDAM operation. Next slide, please. On the primary authority, scope of primary authority, as noted earlier, the proposal is to maintain and retain the existing applies to test that's been used for the joint authority model. And some parties have sought changes to the scope of issues that would fall within that applies to test or additional review and definition of that test. Going down to the next issue, 1 party suggested the ISO seek an opinion from the California Attorney General's office on the legality of step 1 pursuant to California law. And multiple parties raised concerns with the process used by the launch committee to develop the step 1 proposal, while another party commended the same process for its acceptability. Next slide, please. And wrapping up the summary of comments here, several parties also offered a range of comments that in our view explicitly or appeared to apply to the ongoing development of the step 2 proposal. And we found those comments to be out of scope for our review here of the step 1 proposal before us. Next slide, please. So next, I'm going to pivot to our general response to these comments and our proposed recommendation for moving forward with the proposal. Next slide, please. In looking at these comments, we really broke them down into what we saw as two different categories of comments. First, comments on topics that the launch committee of the Pathways Initiative directly considered and addressed. As detailed in the comment matrix attached to the board memo for today's meeting, management's view is the Pathways proposal reached a balanced and well-considered outcome on these issues that should not be modified as part of the step 1 proposal. Then the second category of issues, these are comments that we believe raise new concepts or process details that were not addressed at a sufficient level of detail or not at that level of detail by the launch committee during the Pathways process. Management's view in this case is that the board and governing body may want to collaboratively consider these concepts at a later juncture, either before the step 1 proposal takes effect or quite possibly afterwards, once the two bodies develop more experience with the new primary authority process. Next slide, please. So category 1, the 4 primary issue topics that fall into this category in our view are the trigger for step 1 taking effect, the definition of exigent circumstances, the scope of the primary authority under the applies to test, and the addition of public interest language to the charter. Again, as noted previously, we believe the Pathways team exhaustively addressed these issues and reached outcomes that are appropriate and that we also support. And I'll go into more detail on the next slide if we could move to that one. So more definitions sought both for the exigent circumstances and applies to test. As the Pathways team observed, these terms are both carefully defined in our current governance documents, and we find that those definitions have worked well. The charter limits exigent circumstances to when the board finds that a tariff amendment is critical to preserve reliability or to protect market integrity, and the board must follow the extended dispute resolution process described earlier, which is designed to ensure either a single proposal approved by both bodies or results in a dual filing option, unless the board makes an express finding by unanimous vote that the circumstance is so time critical as to require immediate action. As for the applies to test, that has also been defined in detail in the charter, and the GRC prepared a detailed table of contents of the tariff that illustrates how this rule works in practice. On the next issue, the trigger, we understand the purpose of the trigger as a tool to balance the interest in both evolving governance in the near term, in alignment with the regulator vision, and encouraging expansion of the EDAM footprint. We find the trigger mechanism is reasonable for this purpose, and we support it. On the one comment we received related to the specific language around the public interest, we find that the launch committee carefully considered the specific language they've recommended, and we don't see a compelling reason here to modify the suggestion of the launch committee based on the comment filed to us by one party. Next slide, please. In response to the category 2 issues, here we see a couple of issues that fall into this category. First, the extent to which joint collaboration between the ISO board and the Western Energy Markets governing body continues under step 1. Certain logistical details regarding the dual filing process, and then the process after today's vote, if approved, for implementing step 1. So for the first 2 of these, for the board, we believe the board and governing body to retain the flexibility to collaborate on and consider these topics further over time as they gain experience. In other words, we don't believe these are implementing details that rise to the level of governance changes needed in the proposal or the governance documents themselves. In terms of joint meeting and joint collaboration, I just want to acknowledge that the board and governing body have a strong existing collaborative relationship that we believe can be built upon going forward. And our recommendation is that the board and governing body continue to work together to find ways to collaborate and share information as appropriate. This could involve retaining aspects of the joint meeting structure if the bodies find that as appropriate, but we don't believe it would be appropriate to hardwire specific provisions for collaboration into the governance documents themselves. We recommend the board and governing body retain the discretion and flexibility to develop, refine, and modify those processes over time Similar thinking on the dual filing mechanism. The proposal outlines specific circumstances under which a dual filing may occur and ensures, in our view, that this will occur rarely, if at all, by requiring extensive public stakeholder-driven dispute resolution process designed to achieve a single proposal that both bodies can accept. If it does result in a dual filing before FERC, we believe it'll be a rare circumstance that'll be very circumstance specific, and the board and governing body will be in the best position at the time to collaborate and ensure that the logistics of the filing process meet the requirements set forth in a step one proposal. But again, we believe that it's appropriate to preserve the flexibility for those bodies to collaborate in this area going forward, rather than hardwiring specific process into the documents at this point. In terms of the third issue on implementation of step one, if approved, management proposes that it will move forward with implementing the step one proposal consistent with the recommended trigger mechanism. And specifically, we will prepare necessary revisions to the relevant governance documents and the tariff and bring those documents to both bodies as appropriate for review and approval at a future general session. Next slide, please. So last slide here, getting to our next steps. We'll just want to note again, the indicative voting we saw from stakeholders showed strong overall support for the step one proposal as filed. Management does support the proposal as submitted with no changes necessary. And specifically, we're recommending, again, one, that the board and governing body approve the step one proposal, and two, direct management to prepare necessary amendments to the ISO governance documents and the ISO tariff to implement that proposal. And if approved, management will proceed with developing necessary changes and bringing them before the board and governing body within the coming months in alignment with our expectation for when we expect the triggering mechanism to be fulfilled. So Chair Shorey and Kanzioka, members of the board and governing body, thank you for your time this afternoon. That concludes my prepared remarks, and we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Adam. At this point, let me see if the board or the governing body has any questions. And I will note that we do have a slotted for them before any motion. We have slotted for them to have specific comments and, you know, kind of discussions around the collaboration and all. But any questions on the specific proposal and for Adam at this point? Rob, I see you have your hand raised.
Thank you, Roger. Adam, great presentation, really good overview. I appreciate the level of detail that you just went through, but I do have two clarification questions for you. I think they're both pretty straightforward. The first revolves around the exigent circumstances. As you noted, there were a number of parties that had recommended some refinement of the definition. My recollection and understanding on the definition that we currently have was discussed and debated at length within the GRC. I was not part of the GRC, so this is just my recollection. And the current definition, as noted in the proposal, was the outcome of the work by the GRC. So we're currently using that definition, and I just want to confirm that that's correct.
Thank you, Chair Kanzioka. I also was not a part of the GRC. I believe you're correct, but I'll look to either Stacy Crowley or Bert Gross if they have further comment on that to confirm.
Sure. That's correct. That is correct. It was discussed in depth in the GRC process.
Okay.
And established there.
Thank you, Bert. You know, again, you know, it's been a whole 18 months since then, and I know that they worked, you know, quite a bit before then, but that's what I recall. So thank you. The second clarification question I have regards specific language for revisions to the charter. The proposal has specific language for modifications to the charter for the WEIM and EDAM governance. So my understanding is if we approve the proposal today, we will adopt that specific language for the charter. So unlike some of the other implementation details that you went over, where you would be coming back to the Board of Governors and governing body for adoption, we won't need to take further action for this part of it. And is that correct?
Thank you again for that question, Chair Kanzioka. Again, I'm going to look to Bert Gross for that. I think it's a legal question, so I'd like him to weigh in here as well.
Sure. Yeah, we will not be making any changes to that language. That language, similar to like what happened in the GRC, where there were parts of the proposal that actually proposed very specific language. And when that occurred, you know, when you come back on the governance document step, which will happen later, that language will appear as it is written in the proposal in Appendix D. So it's the same basic approach as we used in similar scenarios with the GRC.
So to be clear on that, or not to say you're not, but just to make sure that we're all clear on that. So we will come back with the governance documents, but that particular aspect of the governance documents will be as you see. And there won't be any implementing details that will be different.
Okay, I appreciate that clarification. So thank you, Adam and Bert and Roger.
I don't see any other hands at this point. Is there, give you one last chance, or not last chance, but one more chance here for a comment, or excuse me, for questions from the governing body or the board. Okay, seeing none. Next we can go to, we have some comments from the launch committee, and as I understand, it's gonna be Kathleen Staggs, the co-chair from the launch committee. Kathleen, are you on the line? Do we not have Kathleen? Silas, can you check?
I'm not seeing Kathleen on the speaker line. Kathleen, if you're dialed into our phone line or dialed in as attendee, can you press the raise hand icon or #2?
Yeah, I see her. I see her
see.
under attendees.
She is on attendee. So Kathleen, I'm just sending you to the panelist line.
Hello,
Okay,
everybody.
Okay.
Sorry about that. The technical difficulties seem to be the sort of frame of my entire life these days. But thank you so much for providing this opportunity. My name is Kathleen Staggs. I'm the Executive Director of Western Freedom and the co-chair of the Pathways Initiative Launch Committee. And it is I am really excited to be able to speak to all of you, and I'm so grateful to the Board of Governors and the governing body for taking up this step one proposal from the Pathways Initiative. So first off, just wanted to thank all of you for your consideration and to express thanks to the CAISO staff and management for providing such fantastic technical input and feedback into the work that we've been doing, and then to commend all of you for running a great stakeholder process for this proposal as well. We had a lot of conversation about the level of stakeholder process that we had at the launch committee, but we're thrilled to see such a thorough process run by the CAISO as well. So thank you for providing all of those opportunities for stakeholders to have their thoughts and ideas heard and considered. I also wanted to take the opportunity to thank the GRC and those members who had put all of the work in to create sort of the foundation that the Pathways Initiative is really building upon, and that this step one really reflects. We were not starting from scratch, and so being able to tap into all of the expertise and the ideas that had already started to be discussed and really build upon that, and I think is a really fantastic reflection of how this issue has continued to evolve in the West, and to see how many different stakeholders continue to be engaged and want to see progress. I think it's also a reflection of how important this regional collaboration and interdependence really is. We are seeing, a continued growing benefits and also continued challenges that really reflect the need to continue this collaboration. We view this step one as a really big a really big accomplishment for this group of stakeholders that came together less than a year ago in response to a letter from regulators in 5 states in the West, sort of putting this challenge on the table. Can we find a different way to enhance regional collaboration and build upon the success and the work that the CAISO has done through the WEIM and going into EDAM here moving forward. So we're really, I think, excited to see this move forward. We're excited to continue our work towards step 2 and appreciative of the CAISO collaboration on that work as well. We look forward to speaking to all of you about that as we continue to refine and come up with more concrete proposals. But really just want to thank you all. Encourage continued support. I think this is a really great demonstration of a very diverse set of support from stakeholders that have not always found such common ground. And so to keep this group of diverse stakeholders together to come up with a recommendation like this is a really significant thing. So we are thrilled that the CAISO was willing to take this up. We're thrilled that you all are willing to take this on today, and just want to again echo my thanks to you all for your discussion and your interest in all of this. So thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen. Any questions or comments for Kathleen from the governing body?
I had one, Roger, Jan.
Thank you, Jan. Go ahead.
Yes, hi. Well, first, let me thank you, Kathleen, and thank the whole launch committee for the excellent work you've done to get us to this point. And I know you all have been working very, very hard. I just wanted to put this on the record to make sure that we have it as part of our decision making today. The launch committee did have the opportunity to review all of the comments that have been submitted during the process that has been run by the ISO. And you are not at this point recommending any changes to what we originally saw in the proposal, although I know there are a number of topics that people are going to be continuing to work on, but I just wanted to confirm for the record that you are still recommending the original proposal as you submitted it.
That is correct, Chair Shorey. Thank you so much for that question. I think the one thing that we viewed as a good response to the recommendation was the continued joint meetings between these two bodies. So certainly supportive of that part of the recommendation as well. But otherwise, no changes to our original proposal.
Good. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jan. I just learned that we have a few members of the launch committee that would also like to comment. So let me turn to them in no particular order. We have Dave Rubin. Dave, are you available?
Dave, if you're on the attendee line, can you? Thank you. I just saw your name pop up.
Thanks. I apologize. We've just evidently left the scripted part of our program.
Oh, no problem. This is the fun part.
But I would certainly take this opportunity to thank just about everybody under the sun. Kathleen and Pam for their leadership and work on the launch committee, for all of the participants on the launch committee. And if I started single out names, it would be unfair. But it's really been an impressive group to have the chance to work with. Just really pleased of the progress that have been made, not just on step 1, but continuing to tackle some really challenging issues and concepts on step 2, and some improvements on the stakeholder process that we may bring forward at a future date. And really just the receptiveness of the Cal ISO management and staff and the board and the governing body and all of the work that's been done on this. it's gotten us to, I think, a very solid place on step one. For us, it's a very powerful message, both internally for the company and within our state, to say that we've pushed governance and independence as a concept as far as we can under existing California law. I think that's just it's all we can do at this juncture, and we've gotten ourselves in a position where we can, potentially go back to the legislature and move it forward. As Kathleen said, we've built upon the work of the Governance Review Committee, and in particular, the way we've sort of divided up what is a market initiative as being something that applies to the EIM entities and has a direct effect on pricing. And I think that division has held up well and should in the future. So just a whole degree of thanks to everybody involved in the process, and again to the board and the governing body for your consideration today. Thank you.
Thank you, David. We also have Scott Renzel. Scott, are you on the line?
Scott, you have been sent a prompt to unmute yourself. You should be able to go ahead.
Hello, Scott Renzel. Just want to confirm you can hear me?
We can.
Great. I just want to quickly say thank you for the opportunity to speak today in support of the Step 1 proposal. I am Scott Renzel, Director of Energy Policy and Procurement with Pacific Gas and Electric Company, and also a member of the Westwide Governance Pathways Initiative Launch Committee. I will echo many of the things that have already been offered today, and note that in little over a year, we've moved from the regulated letter to a full proposal that is before us today that will enhance and reinforce the capabilities of the Western energy markets. I'd like to acknowledge and applaud the CAISO, their ability to receive a proposal from an outside organization as a starting point for an initiative that is before us today, and completing a thorough, open, and transparent policy effort in support of today's vote. I think was an amazing effort on their part. Lastly, I want to note that a celebration of today's vote and hopeful approval is certainly warranted, but it should quickly follow with additional action and effort to address the growing needs of the Western energy markets and that continued need for regional collaboration. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Scott. Next, we should have Tony Braun. Tony, are you on the line?
Tony, you've been sent a prompt to unmute yourself. You should be able to go ahead.
Hi, this is Tony Braun. I believe I should be in the public comment section. So I don't want to short stop anyone that's on the launch committee that's in the queue here.
Okay, well, thank you for that, and we will make sure we get you in public comment. Jan Smutny.
Jan, you've been sent a prompt to unmute yourself. You should be able to go ahead.
Thank you very much. I'm Jan Smutny Jones. I'm the CEO of the Independent Energy Producers Association, a proud participant of the launch committee, and a former chair of the stakeholder board way back in the day. So this has been long in the making here. I want to urge the governing body and the Cal ISO board to move forward with step one here. I think it's a very important piece of work. This entire exercise, as indicated before, you have a very diverse group of Western stakeholders that have been looking at this now for just about a year. And we've tried to build this off of the success of, well, the ISO for one thing. It's been in the market for 26 years. People, I think, are familiar with the market and the infrastructure of the ISO. But very importantly, the significant success of the EIM, the Western Energy Imbalance Market, as well as the growing participation in the extended day-ahead market. These are very good signs of, I think, the maturing of the Western market more into regional cooperation and market opportunities. The Western market is basically changing fairly rapidly. We've got increased electrification going on. recently data centers have shown up on the radar screen, which is requiring resources throughout the West. We see generator retirements and a rapid expansion of renewables throughout the West that can be shared by everyone. So this creates those challenges create some really meaningful opportunities if we have the structures to move it forward. And so we think that step one is a very important step and will help move this forward in a way that we learn from doing things and doing them well, and move into additional steps going forward. So we would encourage your support here, and I thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. And last on my list with the launch committee is Mark Joseph. Mark, are you on the line?
Mark, you've been sent a prompt to unmute yourself. You should be able to go ahead.
Thank you. This is Mark Joseph. I am a member of the launch committee representing the IBW in California. And I want to echo the things that have been said by everyone from Kathleen to all the other members of the launch committee. We appreciate your giving consideration to the proposal, and we will look forward to working on step two and hope to be able to move forward with that sometime over the next year or so. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. With that, I think we can move to our next scheduled comments is from the Regional Issues Forum, and the chair of the RIF is Allie Mace. Allie, are you on the line?
Roger,
I am.
sorry to interrupt. This is Stacey Crowley. There may be a couple of other launch committee members we didn't quite get, so I don't know if you want to just call out for any more of those before we go forward. Thank you.
Anyone else from the launch committee that would like to speak at this time? Silas, can you check and see?
We have several hands up in the queue at this time.
Okay, it looks like James Shetler and Heidi Ratz, and so why don't we start with Jim?
Okay, James Shetler, you've been sent a prompt to unmute yourself.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can
Very
hear
good.
you.
Good afternoon, Chair Shorey, members of the Board of Governors, Chair Kanzioka, and members of the governing body, ISO staff. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this afternoon. My name is Jim Shetler. I'm the General Manager for the Balancing Authority of Northern California, which is one of the publicly owned utility BAs in California. I am also a POU representative to the Launch Committee, and I'm here to speak in support of step one. We at Bank have appreciated working with the diverse stakeholder group that makes up the Pathways Initiative and develop the step one proposal. We also want to commend the ISO staff and the boards for accepting and considering this stakeholder-led initiative on governance. We at Bank are firm believers in the evolutionary approach to broader markets in the West. We believe that the step one proposal is a good start down that road of governance changes to support market evolution. We also support leveraging the existing investment by the ISO, and perhaps more importantly to us, the individual market participants, to minimize the cost of this evolution. With that said, we would encourage the joint boards to approve the step one proposal for implementation. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Next from the launch committee, I believe Scott Miller.
Scott, you've been sent a prompt to unmute yourself. You can go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much. Scott Miller from, I'm the executive director of the Western Power Trading Forum. And not to belabor many of the points that some of my colleagues from the launch committee have made, this has been a tremendous experience of a diverse stakeholder group coming together pretty rapidly to forge the step one proposal that's before you. which WPTF strongly urges you to take. I cannot imagine how we could tackle both reliability and the challenges of integrating the renewable resources without a step like this and further steps to further integrate the West. So I'm grateful that we've been able to come together with this and grateful to my launch committee members, but also to the CAISO, the governing board, and also the board, the board of governors of CAISO and the Western energy market. CAISO staff has been fantastic in this regard. I just want to say that this is a unique effort. I've been doing market integration both as a representing companies, but also as a federal energy regulator for going on 25 years now. This is the most organic effort that I've noticed. I've been a member of PJM staff. I've seen all kinds of governance structures and governance efforts. This is one that came together more rapidly and incorporated a broader stakeholder group of regulators, market participants, public interest organizations, labor, everybody working with CAISO staff as a technical advisor to come up with what is, I think, an excellent step one proposal. And we hope to continue that momentum to work on step two. But I just want to say thanks again to the CAISO staff and to my colleagues on the launch committee and reiterate the importance of step one being approved by these two groups. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. I think currently there are still two hands in the queue, but they're not in the launch committee. So I'm just restricting this right now to the launch committee. So if there's anyone else on the launch committee that would like to be heard now, please raise your hand and let us know. And we'll get you on. Otherwise, we're going to move.
Roger.
Yes.
I think that Heidi is on the launch committee.
Okay.
In front of me.
I was advised she wasn't. So maybe that was incorrect. I know.
Yep, she serves as an alternate. So I think, yeah, she serves as an alternate member.
Okay. Sorry about that. I had heard otherwise. So Heidi, go ahead.
Okay, Heidi, you've been sent a prompt to unmute yourself.
Thanks all, I appreciate it. So hi everyone, Heidi Rotz, Deputy Director at the Clean Energy Buyers Association, which represents large energy customers and also has members spanning energy providers, service providers, and partner NGOs, and a member of the launch committee, though an alternate.
I'm sorry, Heidi, for the oversight.
I also want to thank the Board of Governors and the governing body for initiating the stakeholder process to consider the proposal put forward by Pathways. So SEBA supports the goals of the Pathways Initiative, especially the focus on developing a market that maximizes the benefits that flow to customers. So we support the step one proposal considered here and have found it really helpful to hear from the initiative itself and other stakeholders through this process you've managed. And I also want to flag that not only has this been a really wonderful process for open and transparent dialogue, but the stakeholder process managed by the initiative itself in order to develop step one was also inclusive, productive, and we were really happy to see how open it was for members like ourselves. So just in conclusion, I just want to emphasize that if there's adoption of the Pathways Step 1 proposal today, will really enable continued progress towards unlocking the full benefits of markets for customers, and then thanking everyone for the thoughtful work to get here.
Great. Thank you, Heidi. And let me take one last look. I think that's everyone from the launch committee, though I am not 100% reliable on that, apparently. So if there's anyone else from the launch committee that wants to speak now, and there will be another opportunity during public comment if we don't get to you. All right. Thank you, everyone, for your patience. And with that, let's go to the Regional Issue Forum comment by Chair Ali Mace. Sorry.
Good afternoon, Chair Shorey, Chair Kanzioka, members of the Board of Governors and Western Energy Markets governing body. The Regional Issues Forum appreciates the opportunity to provide comments today and follow up to our August 6th letter. I'm Ali Mace, the RIF liaison for the Power Marketing Administrations and the Vice Chair of the RIF. Members of the RIF have been actively participating in the Pathways process and acknowledge the efforts of the Launch Committee, stakeholders, and the CAISO in advancing the Step 1 recommendation. As shown in the indicative statements of position provided by the stakeholders in the CAISO commenting process, most stakeholders either support, are neutral with respect to, or take no position on the recommendation, with a majority of the commenters expressing support. While the recommendation is widely supported, as noted in the RIF comments, it does reflect a balancing of diverse interests. Many stakeholders support the step 1 recommendation because they believe the expansion of the governing body's primary authority is a meaningful step toward independent governance of Western markets that can be implemented on a near-term basis. On the other hand, some stakeholders would have preferred to see more comprehensive changes to governance included in the step 1 recommendation. In consideration of the range of viewpoints among stakeholders, the RIF supports the Launch Committee's step 2 work to move beyond the step 1 recommendations. As the Launch Committee proceeds with its step 2 activities, the RIF encourages continued outreach to the stakeholder community at large. Open discussion with stakeholders through both the Launch Committee process and any subsequent CAISO stakeholder initiative will be critical, given the importance of this issue to all stakeholders. The step 2 reforms will be most successful if a range of perspectives from stakeholders throughout the West are represented as part of the process. The RIF is prepared to support the Launch Committee in its step 2 efforts and will continue to advise the governing body regarding the perspective of the RIF as step 2 activities proceed. Thank you for the opportunity to comment today.
Thank you, Ellen. With that, I think we are now ready to go to public comment. And let's open up the phone lines. So we do know that we have Tony and at least one other person that is with the hand up, Rayanne. So why don't Rayanne has patiently had her hand up, so why don't we start with Rayanne?
Rayanne, you've been sent a prompt to unmute yourself.
Thank you. I think I got that prompt all settled. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, my name is Rayanne Quadra with Gridwell Consulting, and I appreciate the opportunity to make these brief comments at today's meeting. I'm here today on behalf of Microsoft Corporation. Microsoft supports the Step 1 proposal before the board today, as submitted by the Launch Committee. Microsoft is the owner and operator of data centers, which form the backbone of the infrastructure required to deliver digital services that empower organizations and individuals throughout the region. Therefore, Microsoft is a customer of several electric utilities across 4 Western states: Arizona, California, Washington, and Wyoming. 3 of Microsoft's electric providers are participants in the Western energy imbalance market. Microsoft is impressed by the dedication and thoughtfulness of the Launch Committee and all the participating stakeholders who have navigated complex legal and policy perspectives across several states to arrive at the path to increase independence of the governing body overseeing the WEM and the future enhanced day-ahead market. We support that Step 1 elevates the Western energy market governing body's joint authority with the ISO board to primary authority. The dedication to maximizing customer benefits by providing a solution that can produce the largest market footprint in the West is greatly appreciated. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Rayanne. Next on the line, in order of how I'm seeing them, is John Fulkerson.
John, you've been sent a prompt to unmute yourself.
Good afternoon, Board of Governors and Western Energy Market Governing Body. My name is John Fulkerson. I am the Manager of Market Analytics and Policy at Portland General Electric. Portland General Electric appreciates the opportunity to comment on the decision of the ISO Board of Governors and Western Energy Markets Governing Body on whether to approve Step 1 of the West-wide Governance Pathway Initiatives. PG is a Western energy imbalance market participant and recently signed implementation agreement in the extended day-ahead market, and a proponent of organized market expansion in the West. PGE supports approving the Step 1 proposal. Step 1 represents the progress towards governance, independence that so many stakeholders have stated as a prerequisite of their participation in the EDAM, and further expansion of a West-wide market. Elevating the Western energy markets governing body to the primary decision maker will provide stakeholders with the confidence needed to enable the broadest participation in the market. Moving to a dual filing dispute resolution process will create a balanced approach to dispute resolution that participants can rely on to be fair and impartial before FERC. Incorporating public interest safeguards into charter will provide assurances that the market design will continue to evolve consistent with the state interests. For all these reasons, PGE urges the ISO Board of Governors and Western Energy Markets Governing Body to approve Step 1 today. PGE would like to thank the CAISO for its diligent work engaging with and responding to stakeholders' comments and concerns regarding the governance of the CAISO. The breadth of stakeholder participation in this process and the fact that the strong majority of comments were supportive of Step 1 demonstrates the dedication of the energy community to forging a path towards expanded energy markets in the West. PGE believes approving Step 1 is the best step on that path. Thank you for your opportunity to comment today.
Thank you, John. Next in order on the list is Alice Reynolds, President of the California Public.
Good afternoon, chairs and members of the boards of governors and the governing body. I'm Alice Reynolds, President of the California Public Utilities Commission. Thank you very much for the opportunity to offer comments today. It's really a pleasure to appear here. I'm one of the signatories to the July 2023 regulator letter, along with Vice Chair Sivagunda from the California Energy Commission and other state regulators in the West. And as you may recall, this letter called for the exploration of options for creation of an independent entity that could deliver a market that includes a broad footprint of states in the Western interconnection, including California, and builds on investments that customers in our states have made in the EIM. From there, the West-wide Governance Pathways Initiative was created, and the launch committee's sector representatives really took on the extraordinary task that we're talking about today, the task of collective problem solving to define possible pathways to really harness those opportunities that are on the table at this moment in time. So I want to first recognize and express my appreciation for the thoughtful work of the launch committee in developing the Step 1 proposal before you today, and in advance, thank the launch committees for its continued diligence in developing Step 2. I also wanted to recognize and appreciate my fellow commissioners in California, in particular, as I mentioned, Vice Chair Gunda, as well as Commissioner Darcy Houck from the CPUC and Commissioner Andrew McAllister of the CEC, and my colleagues from commissions throughout the West who have been working collaboratively to consider and preserve the interests of customers in all of our states throughout this process. Second, and most importantly, I wanted to express support for the Step 1 proposal, specifically the public interest components, as an important and significant step to maximize the benefits of wholesale electricity markets for customers across the Western states. I really appreciate the stakeholder process and wanted to lift up the many people, including consumer advocates and many others who provided input on the proposal. So thank you very much to both boards for reviewing this important proposal and carefully considering the continued evolution toward greater Western market coordination for the benefit of the West as a whole. Thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you, President Reynolds. Next on the line, we have Commissioner Letha Tawney.
Thank you so much. Can I confirm that you can hear me?
We can hear you.
Wonderful. This is Commissioner Tawney with the Oregon Public Utilities Commission. And I would second everything that President Reynolds just so articulately shared. In particular, I want to appreciate the thoughtful engagement on continuous evolution of the Western energy markets that both of you boards have engaged in. It has been a delight to see you take up the recommendations from the GRC and implement them so effectively and work together so seamlessly. And I very much appreciate your openness to taking up a proposal from an outside effort. It shows your commitment to really striving to create the market that works for the West. And I want to really appreciate how stretching that might be and how authentically you engage the issues that get brought forward. So beyond that, I would support the Step 1 proposal. I think as President Reynolds articulated, it is key to continuing to deliver a market that builds on the benefits of the Western EIM. And I very much look forward to the launch committee's continued work on step 2. And would echo the thanks to the launch committee members, alternates, and many staff supporting those principals that are engaging so quickly in envisioning a new path forward in response to the regulator's letter. I look forward to seeing what emerges as we step through the fall together, and look forward to continued dialogue across the West. With that, thank you so much for your time and consideration of this really critical issue.
Thank you, Commissioner Tani. Do we have, well, Tony Braun, I know you had mentioned that you were going to be available in public comment, and so this would be a good time. And anyone else that wants to make a public comment, this would be a time to queue up. Tony?
Good afternoon, Tony Braun, on behalf of the California Municipal Utilities Association. There's been a lot that has been said here, so I just wanted to emphasize one thing. I've had the pleasure of serving on the Transitional Committee as well as the Governance Review Committee, and I think the evolution here of the proposals that have shaped the evolving governance structure of the markets is really strong evidence of the strength of these incremental steps. There are things that are in the proposal before you today that just were somewhat unthinkable even a handful of years ago, and it shows that we are all evolving, and that evolution and a stepwise approach really does work as it relates to how these markets are shaped and structured. The other thing I would note as it relates to pathways in particular, but also the GRC and the Transitional Committee, is that these are very diverse efforts. And I think I hope it illustrates that we shouldn't be scared of very inclusive efforts that involve not only utility players and generators and marketers, but a wide swath of interests that are have a stake in energy policy outcomes. So trust the process, I think, is one of the takeaways that I've had from many years of being engaged in this. So, of course, support what's before the governing body and the board today, and urge an aye vote. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Silas, can you see if there is anyone else that would like to make public comment at this time?
There is one hand up in the phone only line. Caller ending in 1996, your line is unmuted. You can go ahead.
Good afternoon. This is Jeffrey Nelson. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Excellent. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to make comments today. I'm the Director of FERC Rates and Market Integration at Southern California Edison. I'm also a member of the Launch Committee, but I'm speaking on behalf of SCE today. So again, thank you for the opportunity to provide comments. We'd like to offer our support of moving forward with a step 1 and encourage the ISO board and the governing body, the WEM governing body, or Western Energy Market governing body, to approve this. SCE shares a vision with many in the West for a single market that's fully integrated throughout the entire West. We view that integration is beneficial for reliability, renewable integration, GHG reduction, and it's a very important framework to aid in customer affordability. It's a win for everyone in the region. And we view that this step 1, the expanding governance, is a positive movement towards that ultimate vision. We'd like to express our sincere thanks to the ISO staff for all of the activity they've done to not only hold the stakeholder process and the ISO management also, but to do this as expeditiously as this has been going. It's a very important process, a very important movement, and we really appreciate the sense of urgency and importance that's been provided to it. With that, SCE encourages the ISO board and the Western Energy Market Governing Body to approve step 1, and we look forward to continuing the evolution that's been discussed as we move forward to developing a step 2 that hopefully you all will see in the near future. And with that, thank you. And if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer.
Thank you. Salas, any other comments on one, either
No.
online or on the phone?
There are no further hands up in the queue on Zoom or on the phone lines.
Excellent, thank you. And board governing body, now is an opportunity for each of you if you have comments before we bring this to a motion.
This is John, right?
Okay, yeah, we'll start with you, John. Go ahead.
Okay, well, first of all, I plan to vote to approve this proposal for all the reasons we just heard. And I don't want to, continue the line of thanks other than to thank the co-chairs. I think they did an excellent job getting us to this position. It's just awesome work. But I do want to shine light on one comment that was out there, and that's the continued collaboration between the Board of Governors and the governing body. Under joint authority, I personally benefited from the discussions we had before making decisions, knowing that we had not only the governing body, but the Board of Governors with diversity of thought and experience to help us make decisions. And going forward, if this passes and the governing body has primary authority, I would think it'd be important for the Board of Governors to have some sort of access to discussions on decisions, because it's going to be on their consent agenda. And I think it's important for them to be comfortable with approving a consent agenda. So I guess I challenge the Board of Governors and the governing body to work together in the next few months to see if we can come up with a process. I'm not necessarily advocating to continue joint meetings, but to come up with some way to capture that value. End of report.
Thank you, John. And we have several more hands up. So let me just go in the order as I see them here. And that would be next to you, Andy.
All right, thanks, Roger. So a conclusion I've come to during my time working on energy market governance on the Governance Review Committee and during my time on the governing body is that effective governance can take a variety of forms. But I have gravitated toward a couple principles. I believe the best governance is created by stakeholders through a broadly representative process. The universe of stakeholders needs to include the market participants as well as the state government representatives and non-governmental organizations that represent the public interest. Today's proposal is consistent with this principle. Thank you to stakeholders who've engaged through the Pathways process and also through the ISO's stakeholder process. Your active involvement has shown that today's proposal has widespread buy-in. Another principle is that the governance framework needs to provide confidence to stakeholders that outcomes will be equitable. In this regard, I like that the Step 1 proposal is built on the strong governance foundations that were developed through the Governance Review Committee and approved by these bodies. The GRC wrestled with how to delineate policy initiatives and produce fair decisions. I see the potential for dual filings as being consistent with the GRC's focus on driving the process toward agreement so that outcomes are developed in the West and not at FERC. I also see the dual filing as assuring stakeholders that the governing body's preferred policies will be presented to FERC. My time on the governing body has been entirely in the joint authority era, so I'll echo Member Prescott's comments. I've really valued the working relationships that the two bodies have built, and I'll support efforts to keep the two bodies working together effectively. And I'll be supporting the Step 1 proposal. Thanks.
Thank you, Andy. I'm going to recant a little bit. I'm going to continue with members of the governing body, and then I'll move to the board. So we've heard from Andy, John, and Rebecca. You're up next.
Thanks, Roger. I'm going to be redundant because I do want to acknowledge the hard work of the launch committee and the layers underneath that in the subcommittees and all of the extensive outreach and the diversity of the launch committee and the whole environment that was created around this movement. Having, as Tony Braun noted, we've been doing this for a long time between the transitional committee and the governance review committee. And it's heartening to see the sphere grow and getting new perspectives into this. I plan to support this our motion to adopt Step 1. I will make a commitment to continue to work for ways and identify ways to collaborate with the Board of Governors. And that was such a key fundamental piece of the governance review committee's recommendation. So I'd like to figure out a way to do that efficiently and effectively, but continue that. And I am glad that participants recognize that value and have held that up. And finally, I am particularly enthusiastic about step one. It's a good tangible first step for us. You worked quickly and gave us something to react to, but the emphasis and focus on the public interest is critical. Those are issues that in my day job I hear consistently and try to support and engage. And I'm very happy to see that being incorporated into this recommendation. So good job, all of the launch committee and its sphere of influence. A job well done.
Thank you, Rebecca. Anita?
Thank you, Roger. So I'm going to read a couple lines from the launch committee's recommendations before I make my specific comments. So their comments are: step one is just the first step towards the full realization of the regulator's vision of energy markets with governance independent of any single state, participant, or class of participants. Step one is a near-term incremental increase in independent governance that shows commitment to the trajectory while continuing to protect reliability, control costs for consumers, and respect state and local policies. I think the word trajectory is really important in there, and that the regulators who in the launch committee saw this as a way to get to independent governance. So then for my comments, that we're here today with this decision to approve Pathways Step 1 demonstrates significant engagement and undertaking by the West as a region. It wasn't one state, it wasn't one participant group, it was very regional in its approach. That it's before us demonstrates the openness to stakeholder interests and stakeholder participation, whether it was the launch committee or whether it was the ISO's process, to drive independent governance. I fully support one West-wide market and independent governance that maximizes net benefits for end users and respects state, local, and public policy interests. Every study has shown clearly that the quantifiable economic benefits are the best or are the greatest with one West-wide market. It benefits consumers, whether they are individual end users, whether they are commercial, whether they are industrial. And for those reasons, I'll be voting to support step one.
Good. Thank you, Anita. I think last on the governing body, we have Rob, Chair Kanzioka.
Thank you, Roger. Going last for the governing body, I will unfortunately be a little redundant, but today I think that is quite appropriate. Well, I'd like to start by expressing my appreciation for the West-wide Governance Pathway Initiative Launch Committee and all of the contributors in their process for the proposed governance changes. As has been stated many times, this was a significant effort and a heavy lift. Everyone involved in the process, getting us where we are today, deserves kudos and thanks. I would then like to appreciate the letters from the Bosher and Riff. The thoughtful perspectives and positions expressed in both letters are helpful in providing clarity on issues and positions. And I do know that both the Bosher and the Riff, with their wide diversity, are challenging to coming up with consensus remarks. So big thank you for providing those to us. I'd also like to appreciate all the comments that were submitted through the CAISO initiative process and the public comments provided today. Even with the overwhelming support or neutrality, the comments received help in understanding where implementation or execution of the changes can be enhanced. And then along those lines, many of those involved in the development of the proposal and commenting on the proposal have been involved with the governance of energy markets in the West for a very long time. The reflection of their wisdom and insights is evident in the final proposal and in the comments that we received. I'd like to move on to a couple of the areas that were touched on in comments. So many noted the value achieved with, let me start off with continued joint engagement. And, you know, that's been commented on by Andy and by John. And so many of the commenters noted that value achieved with the changes made to implement joint authority. I think the recommendation to explore ways to retain the best elements of continued joint engagement makes sense. Just as when we implemented joint authority, there will be a number of logistics and protocols to address. So if we move forward, which I believe we will, I will support the effort to retain the value of the two boards working together to the extent that they can. On the trigger issue, some comments suggest removing the triggers incorporated into the proposal and move forward with the changes now. If that was just an open item, I could support this, but the Pathways team worked hard in coming up with a compromise that balanced the various parties' different perspectives that resulted in the triggers, and I respect that. There were a number of issues and comments with the governance documents, and so with respect to those updates to the governance documents, the recommendation that the specific changes would go through a public process prior to adopting will take place, and Adam went through that, just as in prior governance changes as described. So a number of the details noted by the commenters will be addressed in this process. And then with regards to stakeholder process, and this was not touched on by as many, but I do want to note that the stakeholder process have evolved over the last 18 months and even longer if EDAM is included. I see the stakeholder process continuing to move towards more engagement and with direction by the participants. This needs to be a strong feature for continued success. And just as Andy opined on, from my perspective, governance is all about the participants having trust and confidence in the decision-making process. Participants deserve to have fair, impartial governance. I believe those involved in the energy market should have the governance they believe best represents and protects their interests. Today, we are deciding on governance changes associated with step 1 of the Pathway Initiative. And as described, work is underway for step 2. So as stated many times, today is not an end state. Today's proposal is just another step towards more separate and fully independent governance for the Western energy markets. So at this time, we have an obligation to ensure the proposed governance changes will deliver on the promise of better and more independent governance. I do believe the proposal takes balanced and appropriate steps in the right direction and meets the intended goals. So with that, I plan to vote in the affirmative of making the proposed governance changes. Thank you, and Roger, back to you.
Thank you, Chair Konzioka. Let's go ahead to the board, and I'll start with you, Governor Bornstein.
Okay, I'll be quick. I agree with everything that's been said. I want to thank the launch committee and the supporting staff and the stakeholders for all the efforts they put in. I enthusiastically agree with the need to continue this higher level of communication between the governing body and the Board of Governors. Having been a governor now for 6 years, I've seen it under both regimes, and I think this is just a huge improvement. And then I just want to reiterate something that I think Anita said and a number of other people, that this is step 1. This is great. Step 2 is going to be a heavier lift and a bigger challenge, and I just want to encourage everyone to hang in there. This showed a lot of cooperation and willingness to work together. We're going to need that for step 2, which I think is where the real value will be unlocked. And so I hope everyone will hang in there and stick with the process, and we can get to a great resolution in step 2 as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Governor Bornstein. Governor Galitova.
Thank you so much, Roger, and thank you so much, everyone. I do want to also acknowledge the launch committee and the hard work that they put into this. It's building on the transitional committee, and as Rebecca said, the GRC as well. It's important to see this evolution, and I also want to acknowledge that this process is widely recognized as an excellence in governance and an excellence in the governance process. So I'm sure it will continue into step 2 and beyond, and we look forward to working with the GRC, with all stakeholders, and with everyone, including the agencies that were present here today and supporting us from a regulatory point of view as well, to make sure that this is a success. It's in all of our interests. So congratulations, everybody. Congratulations to the ISO staff as well for continuing to support an excellent stakeholder process.
Thank you, Governor Elizabeth. Governor Edo.
I will also be brief. I think that step one is the right thing to do, and now is the right time to do it. I want to recognize the historic nature of what we are doing as well, and in particular, again, add my thanks to the launch committee for the strong collaboration and leadership that they've shown in bringing this extremely thoughtful and reasoned and well-vetted step one proposal to us. I have looked at the structure and the deliberations that have gone. I've been following it reasonably closely, and I'm just so impressed to see such a diverse group come together around this, and it's what makes my job as a board member a lot easier. I also want to thank my fellow governing body members for the strong working relationships that we currently enjoy. I want to say that I'm very committed, as I've heard from my fellow board, from all of you, I'm very much looking forward to maintaining our close and collaborative relationship going forward, and I will do all that I can to strengthen it. So in summary, I am in support of the staff's assessment of the comments, and I'm in agreement with the recommendation going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor Eto. And finally, last but not least, Chair Shorey.
Yes, thank you very much, Roger. First, I can't believe we turned out such an impressive group of people to talk to us today. I feel like Western Energy has been well represented in today's discussion. And I do want to thank all the people that took the time to file comments, participate in the proceedings, both with the launch committee and then with the ISO itself, and then appearing with us today. We really appreciate this, and it creates a very good sense that we have reached out and have gotten the comments from people. And if there were concerns, there have been plenty of opportunities to have those addressed. So it creates a comfort level that we are doing the right thing, and we're doing it with a great deal of support and consensus. I also want to express my commitment to continue the collaborative work that we've had to date with the governing body. I think in the history of the two boards, all decisions have been unanimous, 100% of them, and I would hope that we will continue that. We have certainly, in the last couple of years, worked hard through the joint board process to ensure that we are hearing the concerns and addressing the issues that all of us are interested in. So we will come up with processes that will ensure that that sort of discussion and interaction can continue to take place. I did want to put in one comment, and I think I've made this comment before, because we are adopting a new dispute resolution process as part of this decision today, the so-called jump ball process. And I simply want to encourage all of us who are interested in energy issues in the West, that if we do end up in areas where there are disputes, that we should work as hard as possible to come to good solutions in the West and figure it out for ourselves and not go to Washington. So even though we're approving that as a potential outcome and a potential path, I think that all of us will retain and remain committed to trying to solve Western energies in the West. And this decision today will be a good example of the ability of the West to come together and solve issues and make progress. And last, I did want to make a quick comment that I fully support and endorse the enhancement of the public interest commitment language that is included for the EDAM and the governance of EDAM and the EIM. I think all of us as board members on both boards are fully committed to that, but it never hurts to make it more explicit. So I think that is a good amendment, but I want to assure everyone that we are committed to that. We understand the obligations and responsibilities to the ultimate consumers, and we are trying to make good decisions that will benefit those customers and consumers of energy in the West. So with that, I've been mixing metaphors throughout today's meeting, but I guess I'll stick with the ball is back in your court now, Roger, to go ahead and get us through the motion. Thank you.
I don't think that mixed any metaphors whatsoever. I think the hockey puck is in my zone, though. And so let's go ahead with the motion. Move that the Western Energy Markets Governing Body and the ISO Board of Governors approve the proposal set forth in the Westwide Governance Pathways Initiative Step 1 recommendation as sent to the chairs on June 5, 2024, and attached to the memorandum dated August 6, 2024. And move that the WEM Governing Body and the ISO Board of Governors direct management to prepare proposed amendments to the ISO governance documents and the ISO tariff to implement the Pathways Initiative Step 1 recommendation, which will be submitted for their review and approval pursuant to the currently effective approval provisions set forth in each of those governance documents. With that, can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you. I think Rob was first and second.
Second.
Thank you, Anita. And I'm going to go ahead and read for the vote. Vice Chair Bornstein?
Aye.
Member Campbell?
Aye.
Member Decker?
Aye.
Governor Edo?
Aye.
Governor Glitova?
Aye.
Chair Kanzioka?
Aye.
Governor Leslie?
Aye.
Member Prescott?
Aye.
Chair Shorey?
Aye.
And Vice Chair Wagner.
Aye.
Thank you, governors and Board of Governors and governing body members. The motion passes. And with that, unless there are any final comments, Elliot or anyone else from the executive team?
I feel like we should have a round of applause or something.
I think that's
it's hard to do it at a virtual meeting, but I'll applaud
that's kind of what I was going for, but that was above my pay grade. So
just one more just massive thank you to everybody involved. Really, really appreciate it. Congratulations.
Yeah, nice work, everyone. And with that, let me know, we're going to adjourn the meeting, but we do have an executive session that's scheduled to start at 3 o'clock, and we're going to start at 10 minutes after the adjournment of this meeting. So you have all the information for that.
Great.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Aye, thank you.